You too. Feeling so much better this week. Had a little issue last week. Anyway, so for those of you who are new around here, Dana and I do this stream. We try to do it every week. Whoop, here I am talking to my own ear. There we go. We we alternate channels. Last time, which was 2 weeks ago, we were over on Dana's channel. Last week I wasn't feeling well. This week we are over here, and next week we'll be back over on Dana's channel, which is Thrive After Abuse, right here on YouTube, and thriveafterabuse.com, and Thrive After Abuse on all the platforms. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification for both channels, and we will be happy to serve you every week. All right. So we found this article, and it is about traits narcissists appreciating their targets, which I think we have both talked about on more than one occasion. Now, I'm not even going to go into all the details on each one, but I'm going to really quickly run down the list. This author, who is named Sherry Steins, over on PsychCentral, says narcissists look for, and then we're going to just discuss that. All right. So she says that they need someone forgiving, obviously, someone loyal, makes sense, someone who overlooks the bad, only sees the good. We're in that. We get it. Someone who has an external locus of control. And what this means really quickly is that targets of narcissists are often people who are not self-referencing, but are other referencing, and in that they don't look internally for decision making, they look externally. Okay. So they ask people or themselves, how do I feel about this? No, they ask other people, how do you feel about this? Okay. Self-sacrificing, overly responsible, and accommodating. All right. So Dana, let's talk about it. What do you think? How do those sound to you, those traits?
I would say by and large, yes. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I would say probably. I mean, there's, I think, very few situations where people get tangled up. They do exist, the kind of more extreme situations where there's more um, fear and intimidation present,
Yep.
where it's not so much based on a person's personality traits.
Hmm.
Uh, it's more the situation that they create. But I would say by and large, people that tend to be in relationships with narcissists or highly narcissistic people tend to have because you would have to.
Yeah.
You'd have to have those traits to keep the relationship going,
Yep. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And one of the things I would add is that a lot of times, what I see, what I think is narcissists look for people who are highly reactive to their emotions, right?
Mhm.
And I know, like for me, even today, if I see somebody in pain, or I see somebody who, there's something I can do to make them feel better. What do you think I'm doing? I'm trying to help that person. And I think a lot of times people, um, narcissists take advantage of people like that. People who they give them little tests, at the beginning, and they have some issue, and if the person is just there and trying to take care of them, trying to help them out or whatever, they're like, "Oh, noted," and
Mhm.
then they keep playing that card. I've seen a lot of that. Have you seen that in your
Yeah, and I think sometimes that can be intentional, and sometimes it can be unintentional, just depending on their level of, I guess, like psychopathy, I guess you could say, and
I
sadism.
agree. Yeah.
Um, I've seen that where it's that continual testing of, are you gonna put my wants and needs first? And it's very intentional, and that it's just such a disturbing, dark vibe that
Mm,
that um, with when it's that premeditated. Um,
yeah.
it's all those little tests. It's just I can't even, I don't know. I think if you've experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, then it's probably really confusing. But the ones that are more where it's not as obvious to them, um, I think it just comes from a place that's just, it's, it's just all about them all of the time.
Right.
And they just expect that's their worldview. And so they
Hmm.
expect the world to accommodate that. And so as they're going through life, when they're first meeting somebody, um, and if the other person's setting boundaries or not complying with everything their way, they're going to lash out and try to get them in line, or they're going to end up leaving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's just, you know, this highlights the sense of entitlement of the narcissist in the way that I mean, I can't tell you how many times over the years, and I should have not been shocked, but I found myself repeatedly shocked at the sense of entitlement. And I think because it was such a stark contrast to my own lack of a sense of entitlement. I had none. I had no sense of entitlement for a long time. And I think now I would say I've developed what I would call a healthier sense of entitlement, in that
Mhm.
it only has to do with things I think I've earned, as opposed to just I just except for I think everybody deserves respect and consideration and things like that. You know what I mean? But as far as stuff goes, or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the level of entitlement, I think that's one of the things people start noticing is, and maybe it's maybe better seen as kind of a lack of adult behavior,
Yeah.
like response. It's a lack of accountability. It's
Yeah.
the responses that they give are just so jaw dropping. Um,
Yes.
that you're like, these cannot be words that are coming out of the mouth of an adult.
I
I,
cannot. Yep.
what? Um,
Yeah.
I remember this was a while back. I dated this guy who he had these weird quirks. He would never say thank you. And um and it was this weird little power struggle that he was always, and it was so embarrassing because anytime anybody did anything to him, he wouldn't say thank you.
Wow.
And yeah. Um so like these all these little power struggles, and then asking them about this behavior. Why do you never, it's rude to not say thank you if somebody's doing something, well, basically I feel like that's owed to me, or I feel um nobody ever told me thank you, that kind of thing. And it's like, what? Or if you catch them cheating, they have some or stealing or whatever it is, they have some excuse of, oh well, it's your fault, you left your wallet out.
Right.
Or it's like a childish excuse for something, and you just think you have, I I can't. Like,
Yeah.
I can't. It does not process, or I cheated on you because
You
uh
were on your period.
right, you were on your period, or you were working
Right.
too much, or you didn't dress sexy enough, or you dressed too sexy, or whatever. I mean, it's just a bunch of immature garbage.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that is exactly the kind of stuff that they do. It's just ridiculous. I find it interesting that your ex didn't say thank you, because I see that in a lot of narcissists, and for those exact same types of reasons. Um, but then of course you've got your smoother types, who are just, as they would say in the South, all like molasses or whatever. I don't even know what they say, but they've got the smooth voices, the smooth talking. They say all the right things, but then they're just all talk. You know, it's yeah. So basically, I think what they appreciate in a person overall is somebody who will just either be like, for me, I remember in the relationship, I remember thinking, what in the heck is wrong with this person? This is before I knew any of this stuff. And then I thought, well, maybe it's just me. And then I thought, well, maybe I can help this person be better. That was my biggest downfall, helping people be better. Ironically enough, I always wanted to save everybody, and that was one of the things I would do. Is I would see somebody and I would feel that they were broken in some way, and that if I would just be able to help them, you know, I could help them with their self esteem. I could help them feel better. I can't tell you how many people's self esteem I
Yeah.
built up. I
Yeah.
thought, but it's they take advantage where they can. They overstep boundaries. They want somebody who's going to basically just go, how can I make this person happy? And that's where I was for me. I mean, I wanted to. I literally tried to change myself and my own, basic makeup to make someone else happy. I tried to. reinvent myself in their vision almost. Obviously, that didn't work out very well, but I sure tried.
Yeah, I really got hung up on thinking I just needed I was so focused on trying to get through to him. Like, I just need to change my approach because this my request like, here's an example. So we used to go, off-roading,
Hmm.
and he had this race truck, and and it had the race seatbelts, which come over and like almost like a roller coaster kind of
Mm.
seatbelt. And we would go real fast and, go out in the desert and just tool around. And I had never done that before. And anyways, um, I don't know if it was the pressure of the seatbelt or what was going on, but I couldn't breathe,
Wow.
and my hands and arms were going numb. And so I had asked him at one point. I said, "Can you just slow down or just stop? I don't know what's going on. I feel really lightheaded." And he was getting irritated with me. Like, "Well, no, we're out here to race." And I said, "Oh, no, I get that." I said, "I just don't know what's going on. If I'm holding my breath because we're going so fast and we're going over bumps, or like, give me a second to figure it out,
Right.
um, or let me out of the car, like one of the two." And he was so annoyed. And this continued. So he'd slow down for a little bit, but then it would happen again. And it got to the point where my hands were like locking.
Oh,
And so there was some sort of issue with m- oxygen and my oxygen exchange there. Uh and he was so irritated with me. And I remember thinking, I don't understand why there's no compassion here. Like, why we can't just stop for a second. I mean,
yeah.
I must I must just need to explain this differently to you for you to understand. This is a big deal. Like, I could pass out, I could die. I mean, I don't know what's going on. But there was just no, it was just all about him all the time. And there
Yeah.
was no uh empathy
Hmm.
there. So that's what got me caught up for the longest time, was thinking, surely there's a mature adult that can be reached if I can just phrase things the right way or get them to see that this is an actual issue to take seriously. It just didn't cross my mind at that time that there were just people out there that could be so self-centered that they just truly didn't care.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I did a similar thing. Um, Not that exact thing, but I used to try to always I would think for hours and hours and hours, how can I say this? How can I help this person understand me? And I'm really pretty good at communication, like you. You know, I mean, I literally, like you now, I've always been a writer. I've always been a communicator. I have been a journalist. I communicate for a living for my whole life, you know? And so, like, I never could understand. I would always be like, how do I explain this? And only because, only for this specific group of people who always pretended to not understand, even though I knew logically they were intelligent enough to get what I was saying, but they would play dumb. And I would just always think, okay, fine. I won't talk to them. They're a brick wall. That's fine. And then later I'd be like, oh, I could say it like this. And I'd get real excited and they'd come home and I'd be like, ah, let me tell you the thing. And they'd be like, no, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And it would be a constant act of frustration on my part. But I did that. I would always try to think, if I could just say it different, if I could just, maybe if I appeal to this part of them or that, nope, never mattered. If they didn't want to hear it, they wouldn't hear it. you know,
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
frustrating.
And that really, one of the big takeaways for me from those types of dynamics with people was realizing, I don't have these issues with other people in my life.
Right.
And because of that, I know that it's possible to interact with people in a smoother way. And I don't know if it's me or if it's them or if it's the combination of the two of us, but this doesn't work. And I cannot do crazy making anymore. Like, if I'm, like you were saying, if you're rehashing conversations, in the
Yes.
middle of the night, thinking about how could I have worded this different, or what word did they get tripped up, or things all of a sudden become really difficult.
Yes.
Disagreements or conflict becomes next to impossible to solve. That kind of stuff. That's There's generally fundamental world views. I mean, that are in conflict and or manipulation.
Agreed.
And either one of those is going to be a problem. So
Indeed. Yes. I totally agree. Should we jump into the chat, you think?
yes. And because I'm having internet issues, I'm a little concerned to try to do anything. So
Okay.
maybe you could
I got
get
it.
questions out. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, everybody. We're just going to jump right into the questions. Crystal, please be very safe when you're out on your on your she's getting ready to go out in the snow for 10-degree weather. Woo! It's not quite that bad here today. Anyway,
Yeah.
Malta, thank you for being here representing the Mod Squad. Appreciate you. Jennifer says that's all her, all the traits that we listed, as did up three. Jack Gooding says if we do have an internal locus of control, they work on us until we no longer have one, which in regard to the external locus of control, absolutely the truth. Okay.
Actually, I wanted to address
Deborah Lyndhurst says,
real
oh, yeah,
quick
please do.
the internal
Mhm.
versus external locus of control. Yes, if we're not solidly grounded within ourselves, and again, this stuff's not taught.
Right.
So it's very easy for a person to get knocked off center by, especially when we have that emotional investment in the person. It's a boss at a job that we want to keep. It's
Hmm.
a long friendship. It's a relationship where, we have feelings for this person, and we're so invested in keeping that dynamic going that that's how we get knocked off center,
Yeah.
is because we're willing to replace our reality with theirs.
Yeah.
So that's when this is the core of the erosion that happens of targets, people that get tangled up with narcissists.
That's right. Yeah. And
uh,
I can identify with that, actually. I really thought I was a total badass at one point in my life. And then when after I got out of my mother's house, I started to feel like I was in control of my life, and up to a point. And then meeting my ex-husband, all of a sudden, I remember being offended that he wanted to help decorate the house. But I got over that, but my, my point is I remember being shocked so often by his just lack of humanity. And yeah, that I started to change the way I behaved from an internal locus of control to an external one, exactly like you mentioned and Jack mentioned. Yeah. Anywho, okay, sorry. uh, Deborah says, I believe my boyfriend is a narcissist. I say to him, you don't care about my feelings. And he says he does. Button. I think I'm missing a piece of that, but, or maybe she's saying button as a nickname. I don't know. Um, anyway, yeah, I mean, they don't acknowledge that they don't care about your feelings, because that would be acknowledging a flaw or a fault or whatever
mhm.
they think. If they say they do, then you'll believe them. Dana?
Yeah, I think yeah, you're absolutely right. It's uh they care about your feelings that they find, but only the feelings that they find valid.
Hmm. And only
So
as they relate to them. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dana. Um, Life is a journey says they get fuel out of our reactions and they find enjoyment in triggering others. I would agree with that. Any thoughts?
Yes. So what we were talking about earlier, how you had said, there's some narcissists out there that really enjoy kind of evoking an emotional reaction.
Yes.
And there are quite a few out there that do this intentionally. And and some that I would say don't do it intentionally, but that also feed off of that. And it's just letting them know that they're significant. It's sort of like, they'll I don't know. It's the makeup breakup. It's the canceling at the last minute. It's the silent treatment for no reason. It's they're trying to get their partner to be reactive,
Hmm.
um, so that either that they feel important, or to just to sit back and kind of watch that pot boil over. Like if you're around other people, they might push and push and push until you lose it, and then they're like, "See what I have to deal with?"
Yes.
Kind of a thing. And again, some of this is just flat out emotional immaturity, but for those that are on the farther like psychopathic into the spectrum, I think it's intentional and it's malicious and they enjoy that.
I agree. I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where I thought it was like almost unintentional, like it's just a behavior they had learned and that's how they knew how to
Mhm.
get by. And I've also seen it where it was clear that they were intentionally torturing and intention and smiling about it, liking it,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, and little kids do this, right? If you're on a road trip, it's the whole, I'm not touching you, I'm not
Yes.
touching you. And then the other one freaks out and then they hit the sibling and then someone, Mom, I can't believe, she
Yeah.
hit me. And it's like, well, um, I was
That,
watching, speaking of that, there was an old Roseanne Barr, the TV show episode about that. And Darlene and, oh, who was it? Becky were doing that. And, uh, I forget who it was. Like Becky was like, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching. And then Darlene freaks out and hits her. And Becky's like, but I wasn't touching her. And Roseanne said, well, then I guess it really wasn't worth it then. And I thought that's so true,
yeah, that is so funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it's a really good example of how they get us to kind of like almost explode. I feel like that's part of the smear campaign almost. It's the gaslighting thing. Like I used to say, you could be in a room full of people and you can be emotionally abused in that moment without anyone knowing it, right?
Yeah.
And no one will understand that when they look at you like this it means that, or when they say this word that sounds completely innocent to the outside ear, or a phrase that it makes you freak out because you know what that means. uh yeah. I mean, I remember being at parties with my ex, and I would be talking and people would be listening and nobody would be looking at or listening to him. And he would reach over, put his hand on my arm or my hand and squeeze and just look at me. And I knew that meant shut up because I want the attention. And if I didn't shut up in that moment, I would hear about it later. And I still probably would hear about it later just for being so talkative and taking away the center of attention. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Mm.
I can't help it. People want to talk to me anyway, you know, but that's silly. But it really did. It was a thing. So I used to get a little testy about it. And that's the thing, is that if I, it seems sweet to people that he would reach over and, you know, and sweetly look at me and, but that's not what it
Mhm.
meant. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Eva says, they're all demons. You can't believe a word they say, mainly after they get caught. Blessings to you both. Thank you. But I would say you could probably never believe a word they say. And as far as demons go, I don't believe in demons in the traditional sense, but someone once explained it to me. One of our Spanily members explained it to me in a way that I could kind of get on board with, in that it is something about a negative entity, a negative spirit. I don't know. I can't remember how because right now I'm still not into it, but, but the way this one lady explained it to me, I totally was like, okay. And I think I even made a video about it one time where I said, okay, you got me. From this perspective, I can see it, but I agree with you that they're not, they're practically, some of them are actually on the evil end of the spectrum.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that kind of behavior has gone by many names throughout
Yes,
time.
exactly.
Wickedness, evil. It's basically you're witnessing a complete lack of
Humanity.
humanity
Yeah.
and what we consider to be human behavior. It's logical behavior and it's compassion
Hmm.
and it's the ability, empathy,
Yeah.
these kinds of things. And so when a person's lacking all that, when their behavior is so illogical because it's so self-centered and self-serving at the expense of or destruction
Yeah.
of everybody else, we call that evil.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Lack of basic human decency. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
totally. Let's see here. Mike says they sure do take advantage, especially if we try to help them out. Absolutely true. And we kind of talked about that a little bit. I'm looking for questions. Throw your questions in, people. Now's the time. Um, let's see.
Well, you know what? While you're looking for a question,
Yeah.
let me circle back to the traits that you'd mentioned earlier on,
Okay.
and because this is such a big part for all of us with healing is, like we were talking about, this stuff's not taught, and so a person finds themselves knocked off balance
Hmm.
by this pathological person, and their really skewed worldview. And we get pulled into this thinking that if we're knocked off center, we just think, oh, well, they must be right. They must be
Mhm.
right. They must be right. And it's amazing how we can spin any information to kind of justify that behavior. So this is where it just gets all tangled up. Oh, well, I must forgive and forget. And if I'm going to be a good, relationships are all about compromise and all of this. But if we have no idea of where balance is
Mhm.
in a relationship, where we start and end and where another person starts and ends, then all of this, anything we read, any self-help book, any YouTube video, any uh you know biblical scriptures, anything is going to be taken out of context because we don't know where that center line is.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge part in healing, is figuring out um what healthy boundaries are, what's appropriate to
Absolutely.
start and end, because there's nothing, we can't build other skills until that one's in place.
Mhm. Right, I agree. And actually, kind of going back to uh, what you started out talking about, Deborah sent it before she was done. I thought that might be the case. Said when she explains to her narcissist, or the narcissist, let me say, um, how she's not happy with his behavior in some way, then he will say things like that's not true and essentially just disregards the feelings. And as of three adds, even their wants come before our needs. Somebody earlier said, my needs are never considered. I nobody, and that's exactly what you see. I found myself, um, whoa, things I would normally really care about and be concerned about, I stopped caring about and being concerned about when it came to being with a narcissist, because I just wanted them to not be a jerk to me. I wanted them to not scream at me and beat me down emotionally and all that stuff. And so I was like, oh, well, you want this thing that I have, you take that thing, just be nice to me. And that's what my whole life became. Just please be nice to me. you know, and it wasn't a thing that I could always, it wouldn't matter if I gave up everything, I still couldn't get that person to be nice to me unless they felt so motivated that they wanted to. You know
Mhm,
what I mean?
mhm.
Intermittent reinforcement. Anyway, I kind of went off track with that a little bit, but
That's that whole locus of control thing is so key, because if we're around other people that don't respect each other's individuality,
yeah,
which again, stuff's not taught. So
right.
this happens all the time. And sometimes it's well intended, or it's just people don't even realize that they're doing it. But if if they're like, oh, well, they've got an issue with the clothes you wear, the makeup you wear, or the makeup you don't wear, or, how you dress, or all of that. If we don't know where our center is and we don't know what's right for us, and if we're not confident in that, then it's really easy to get knocked off center thinking, oh, well, there's something wrong with my hair or my makeup
Yes.
or my weight or my clothes or this or that. And we start to internalize that. And then,
Mhm.
especially for people that grow up in hypercritical homes like this, and then they leave that situation, and then they find people that are more like appreciative of their individuality. And
Right.
they're like, oh no, I think it's great that you look the way that you do, or that you are in the career field that you're in, or whatever. And you realize, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I was just around all of the wrong people that didn't respect me as an individual,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah. And then on that same token, when you did grow up in a house like that, even the smallest amount of validation sometimes is enough for you to think, this person's different. They get me. I mean, at least that's what it was for me. Because my ex-husband thought I was attractive and he thought I was this and that and all the other things. And I was some of those things. I was really smart. I was, that's what I knew for sure. I didn't think I was attractive. He did. And that was like uh, amazing to me. I don't know why. But lots of things like that. And so even the tiniest, and so he did briefly validate me early in our relationship, and because of that I saw something in him that wasn't even really there. And it was, I thought he was the opposite of the toxic person I grew up with. And he was in some ways. He was more covert about it. He was more charming, externally to me, until he wasn't. So, yeah. Oh, UNA says, I was constantly shocked into silence. I should have spoken up more because it probably confused them. Yeah, I was shocked into silence as well sometimes. But sometimes I would just keep talking and that would just get me in more trouble. Anyway, yeah. Okay. How can you trust them when all they do is lie? Mike says, I don't really think that's a question, but you can't usually trust them. Let me say this, though. Here's one that really resonates for me. Robin C says, I became uncomfortably numb inside my relationship, and I'm so sad now. Yeah, I also lived in uncomfortably numbness for a long time because I had to go numb to not want to do horrible things to myself, really. And that's, it was that serious. And if I was numb, then I could just pretend everything was fine and keep smiling. But that wasn't always so easy. Does that resonate for you at all?
Yeah. Um, I think like most of us, I've had, a handful of relationships with really pathological people over the years, and every single one of those relationships and friendships has been different.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so it's just kind of just thinking, kind of reflecting back on that. But what I was thinking about was the person who said, "Well, how can you trust them if when they lie?" And like you said, Angie, the answer is you can't.
Yeah,
But I think to take that a step further, because what so many of us do is we're like, well, then they need to change. They just need to start telling the truth and they need to be more trustworthy and this, that, and the other. And uh, that goes back to those traits kind of that we talked about earlier on with the kind of this high tolerance for being mistreated.
yes.
And um, when we're finding ourselves in a dynamic where we're trying to we're trying to trust someone who's not trustworthy, it's time to ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Why are we trying to hang on and make this relationship work?
Right.
Because
Yeah,
that's a deeper question there. It goes far beyond, oh, I love him, or oh, it's because it's my mother.
right. Right.
And it generally has to do with, I'm afraid of being alone. There's fears of abandonment. Um, there's I don't want to start over. I've been with this person for 20 years. I'm afraid this is as good as it's going to get, whatever
Yep.
it might be. It's uncovering those fears and addressing them that'll get to the base issues. Because if we don't do that, we're just going to be spinning in circles with this person, trying to convince ourselves that we need to trust a liar.
Yeah.
And that's going to get you nowhere, because they're going to keep lying and you're going to keep thinking it's um, your fault for living in the past or not trusting them when they shouldn't be trusted. So
And that teaches you not to trust your own intuition. And
yeah,
that is why so many of us have to reconnect to that when we get out, if we get out, Yeah. Yeah. And on that same note, yeah, something you said triggered something for me to tell you, but I can't. Oh, well, I'll come back to it. Um, okay. Yeah. All right. So I had a question, um, and this is a good one from Joy. She says, why are they so in love with and obsessed with us in the beginning? In fact, that just reminds me, hold on really quick, Joy. The beginning. So you were talking about how, and we mentioned how we can't trust them when all they do is lie. One thing I want to point out is, and I see this a lot, you know, most people who end up with a toxic person like this at least the people that show up in our audiences, tend to be intelligent, tend to be, in my opinion, attractive, tend to be people who are worth loving, right? And also they tend to be people who read people really well most of the time. So they go, well, I thought I was smarter than this. I thought I could see better than this. And I say, what do you mean? And they go, I believed them when they said they loved me and I was their soulmate. I believed them when they said X, Y, and Z. Here's why. Because when you're in the beginning of that relationship and the love bombing part of it, unless they are on the psychopathic end of the spectrum, in which case they're doing it totally just to F with you, um, and mess with your head. Most of the time, when they are saying to you in that moment, "Oh my gosh, you're my soulmate. I don't know where you've been all my life. You're the person for me." They are telling the truth as far as they know in that moment. In the same way that in the same way my nose is itchy. In the same way that a child is telling the truth when they say, "Oh my gosh, this is the best Christmas toy I've ever had in my whole life. I'm always going to love it forever and ever and ever." They mean it in that moment, but like next week when they've played with it for 60 hours and they're like, I'm going to go ride my bike or whatever. It's the same thing with a narcissist. And that's why I think so many of us are thrown, because when they look us in the eyes and they're like, "You're my soulmate. Where have you been? I've been looking for you for my whole life." We're like, "Yeah, totally. I'm with you. Where have you been?" We just go for it. And I think part of the reason a lot of us have fallen like that is because in that moment, unless again they're on the psychopathic end of the spectrum and then they're doing it just to hurt you, but for most of them, I would say in that moment when they say that, they really, really think that's true. But
Mhm.
then, later they notice you're human and they're like, "What, you fart? Are you kidding me?" You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
how dare you be a person? So I wanted to point that out. Okay, so Joy's question then is, why are they so in love and obsessed with us in the beginning, and then they find something else to worship and turn on you like you're nothing? Well, I just kind of almost explained that, didn't I? But Dana, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think like, basically what you're saying, Angie, um, when a person, well, I guess when a relationship starts out, there's always that level of intensity.
Mm,
Well, not always, but generally there's that level of
often.
intensity where
Infatuation.
right, that infatuation, and that's a natural part of a relationship during those first 90 days or so
Mhm.
for both people to experience, because we're so focused on connecting and
Yes.
we're finding common ground, and it's just this constant flood of, like, dopamine and all of these oxytocin and all of these feel good chemicals, especially if there's sex involved, and it feels like, oh, I just have met the perfect person for me.
Euphoria. Yeah, it's
Euphoria,
great.
right.
Yeah.
And uh but it's important for us to realize this is the infatuation stage. It's not based on anything substantial, because nothing of substance has had a chance to grow yet.
Right.
And relationships don't grow just based off of common ground and attraction. It's based off of
What comes
uh,
next?
the authenticness between two people. It's getting to know them at an individual level. And so that's when the relationship starts to kind of, when both people start being real and they start putting down the pleasantries, and
They fart in front of each other.
the morning breath, you have different you're more comfortable asserting your opinions or
Yeah.
having opinions. You listen to different music, whatever it might be. You watch different TV shows. And then all of a sudden, because we all do this, it's real easy to get this, we unknowingly create this fantasy about the other person of who we think they are
Yes.
based on what we've seen so far. This is just kind of how the human brain works in general. It's always kind of creating this scenario of what we think is next,
Mhm.
and based off of information we've already processed.
Yeah.
So, and it's real easy for this to go wrong because we don't have enough information yet. So we're making these assumptions on another person based off of all kinds of things, based off of how they dress and music and TV and religion and politics and all of this stuff. And early on in a relationship, if we're so focused on common ground, it's
Mhm.
easy for us to unknowingly create this picture of this other person. And then when they start acting outside of that, we're shocked.
Mhm.
We're like, oh my gosh, I would have never guessed that you liked country music,
Right.
or that, uh, that I don't know, that you voted for this certain politician or whatever. And then everybody's thrown for a loop.
Yeah.
And for them, if a person's emotionally mature, they realize this infatuation phase is the infatuation phase.
Right.
It's not, there's nothing of substance here.
Right.
And they realize that. And so they're slow. They might feel, it's easy to get caught up in this and feel like, I love them, I want to be with them, I want to marry them, I want to
Mhm.
babies, I want to, and you're all in.
Right.
But maturity comes in when we slow down and see that infatuation for what it is. Narcissists across the board are emotionally immature.
Yes.
That's why all of their behavior is crazy making. They don't have mature ways of communicating, of coping, of dealing, solving problems,
Mhm.
any of that, of relating to other people. It's all deeply dysfunctional. And so when um, we get so hurt if we get tangled up with them, because like Angie was saying, in the moment, they might really believe everything that they're saying, but their emotions are shallow. They're very fleeting. It is. It's just like a child who's like, oh, this is my favorite thing ever. And then I love it so much. And then 10 minutes later, they're on to the next thing.
Yes. Yep. Yep. And, I've likened it in the past to like a cell phone. Like when you get a new cell phone, it's
Mhm.
shiny and perfect and runs real fast and doesn't have all the things on it yet. And then, like, 6 months or a year later or 2 years later, depending on what phone you got, um, it slows down and a new model comes out, and you're like, this phone was cool before, and now it sucks. And then you want to go buy a new phone. That's pretty much how narcissists view relationships on some level. I think a lot of narcissists want and expect infatuation forever, which is, as Dana just very
Yes.
clearly stated, not realistic, right? Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. And that's when it's this kind of hungry ghost thing within them where they're always searching and they always feel victimized and let down because
Yeah.
they're thinking that they should always be held in this absolute high regard, and um, that it should always feel this way.
Right.
Well, nothing of substance always feels that way.
Right. Even in like relatively healthy relationships. I mean, I always think and I always advise, be as honest as you can be yourself, etc. from the beginning. But if we're being honest, all of us might have a little thing. Like we might tolerate watching hockey or something. Not that I would know anything about that. I tolerated watching hockey at the beginning of my relationship. I don't enjoy watching hockey. I tried to enjoy it, but I couldn't. And eventually I had to say, listen, I'm sorry, I just don't like hockey. you know, and in a lot of relationships that would have been a big problem. So I'm just saying everyone has a thing. Everyone, yeah. Okay.
And real quick, back to
Yes.
that, when they do lose interest, where so many of us have got, male or female, have gone wrong, is then we feel we're taking the advice of, oh well, we need to keep the spark in the relationship, and it's our responsibility to keep them
Hmm.
interested all of the time.
Yes.
And um, so then we're tripling up our efforts to try to keep them faithful.
Yes.
And that doesn't work. And that's a big sign too of low self-esteem. It kind of turns this where we're trying to earn our partner's attention, affection, loyalty, kindness, honesty, these kinds of things. I see this stuff on Instagram all the time with women talking about, oh, you just need to know how to keep a man, kind of a thing. And you got to basically, be that's the whole angel in the kitchen and devil in the bedroom kind of a
Girl.
thing. And you're working overtime to to I've always looked good. I my hair is done, nails done, all of this stuff, and it's so over the top, and it's so um,
It's such BS.
it's not sustainable. And the reality is, there's always going to be somebody out there. When something's shiny and new, it's shiny and new. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you're any less attractive or less desirable, or that you somehow failed or
That's right.
couldn't keep a man. It's that, or couldn't keep a woman, that, whatever it might be. It's some people just like the thrill of, the sneaking around and the lying and the, the newness of a new relationship. And it's important that we keep our self-esteem and our hurt feelings in two different buckets, because I've seen so many women, especially, I'm sure men go through this too, but where, like the whole revenge body.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this relationship ends, I'm going to get into great shape, I'm going to prove to them that I have value.
Hmm.
And it's like, that's off center, like as if we're running around trying to prove our value to people who don't care.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's,
I did it. I did it. I wrote
yeah.
books about it. Yes, I did. I did. I had a whole website and everything. Yeah, I did. I I confession, I did. I wrote a series called How to Be a Hot Wife. I sure did. And I have now taken it off the market because while it has some really good self-care tips in it, it also has a lot of bullshit, pardon me, in it. I'm gonna be demonetized for saying that, but it's true. It had a lot of how it was that it was how to keep your man happy and how to have a happy marriage and all that BS, and it was just BS. It wasn't. It was legit. You could do all that stuff, but basically, it was, if we're being honest, it was how to keep a narcissist happy. And it, like
Mm,
you said, it doesn't matter. It never said that, and that wasn't the plan when I wrote it.
yeah.
But it was really, I thought about self-esteem, but it's exactly what you said. I wrote it at a time when I was broken, and I was trying to make my life perfect in a way that was not right. It was not true to myself. And that's why I don't have those books out there anymore. And I will not put them out there again because of that. But it was a lot of, psychological stuff, well, if you want your husband to like you, then do this. And if you want him to, think you're amazing, then say that. And you know what? It worked, but it was, I don't recommend it anymore.
Mhm.
I grew up and I learned a lot of new things, and yeah, so I totally unfortunately deeply relate to what you just said. Because I believed it for a long time. My husband even had a shirt that said "I heart my hot wife." You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And I had a whole website. I had a whole situation, and I made some interesting content. Some of it is good content, but I can't ever put it out there again because because there are benefits to, there were tips about being attractive or being which I'm not anymore, but I was for a minute.
Mhm.
um, anyway, moving along. That's really interesting that you said that. This is a really powerful question from UNA that I actually really relate to, and I wonder if you do too. She says, weird question that I have never voiced. Has anyone ever felt really strong, sort of out of body experiences when you're around people enjoying life, like, I don't belong here, almost alien or unseen? Yes, girl. Yes, I remember in college, even when this is before any seriously narcissistic partners, but it was post living with my mother, who was my first one. And I remember being in a room full of people, looking around them and going, like, I feel like I'm completely alone in this room. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I don't relate to these people. These people can't possibly understand how I feel. And I just felt separate and just like that alien. How about you? Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, absolutely. But I
Yeah.
think it's due to what you're saying is the lack of connection.
Yes.
And when we do start finding common ground, it's so bonding. I
Yes.
remember I had this class project, it was a long time ago, and it was basically kind of talking about the uh, major moments in a person's life, like that your life that have shaped you,
Mm,
and which is a really interesting exercise to do. It causes a lot of self-reflection. If you can find five events that shaped you in maybe a less than desirable way, and five events that shaped you in a more positive way. Anyways,
homework, everybody. Go
yeah,
right
I mean,
ahead.
it's really interesting. And so, and then we went around in a circle and shared this. And at the beginning, I was like, man, I could not be more different from everybody here. Like, I cannot relate. And by the end of it, even still, our experiences were all so dramatically different, but it was that the the sense of struggle and the pain and um, the triumph and all of it. You just got to know people at a more human level, and we all spent the rest of our time together really feeling deeply connected.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think
really cool.
when we feel alien, it's because we just don't feel seen or
That's
connected,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah. I definitely did not feel seen for many years. Um, I totally get it. UNA. Yeah. Um, Real quick to Mike, he says, kind of reminds me of a Pink Floyd song, Comfortably Numb. That is exactly, I actually did a video entitled Uncomfortably Numb, basically, not a music video, but that was where I was inspired. That song, I used to really resonate for me, you know,
Mhm.
and that's where I came up with that title. It was not an original title, but yeah. Any thoughts on that, Dana?
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree. Well, it's just kind of that disconnection and
yeah,
even disassociation that happens after a traumatic event.
yeah, and
Uh,
that's in. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, well, that's the weird thing, mm, I guess you could say, about trauma is, and it is, no matter what it is, it makes a person feel profoundly alone, like nobody
Yes.
else can possibly understand. And uh, that's just the biggest challenge with trauma. And it's one of the reasons it can be so healing for other survivors to
Mhm.
form groups and to have that connection and to realize, even if we don't have the exact same experience, you can relate to these similar emotions. And, other people get it. Like, you're not profoundly alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to see. I thought I saw another question and I can't find it now. Okay. Okay. So for those of you, oh, thank you, Mo Cowboy. Big hugs and love to you. For those of you who are saying they need a place, a site, a healing site, we have this site here, YouTube. Obviously, we have Dana's site, Thrive After Abuse, my site, queenbeing.com. I have a large group of groups, queenbeing.com/group-support or queenbeing.com/span, SPAN. Dana, where can they find information about your Thrive After Abuse group?
Um, you can go to my website. It's under support.
There you go.
We have a Facebook group, and then we have a website group too.
Okay. We also have well, you'll see that. I also have an off-site group, off Facebook group as well. You can check that out at the links I just told you. But don't worry. We do a lot, Dana and I, to try to support this community, and a large percentage of what we do costs nothing for you.
Mhm.
So just so you know, so don't worry. We're not leaving you hanging after this is over today. And Dana does a Wednesday night stream. Dana
Yes, 8
also.
8:30 PM Eastern Standard Time. Mhm.
Okay, so there's that, and I do a Tuesday morning and a Thursday morning here, and Lise does, I think, 5 days a week over on the Queen Being Narcissistic Abuse Recovery channel. So check all that out too. Okay, I am looking. Last chance to throw your questions in, everybody, because we are just about to wrap up in a few minutes. Um, now, this is how Keating Simons said something that I think is interesting. Said covert narcissism is the great catalyst of the great awakening for real. Okay, let me say something. I kind of think that might be a thing because, and I'm not trying to be all woo woo with y'all here because, I like the science and whatnot. But I will tell you this. I will tell you that from what I have seen, and I think, Dana, you might agree, a lot of us, when we go through and we intentionally heal after being abused in a situation like this, when we take the time and we heal and we learn to set our boundaries and we figure out who we are and what we're into and what we're all about, and we really drop all that stuff that was kind of shoved down our throats, whether it's our whole lives or for 20 years or whatever, I really think that we do evolve on a level that is beyond a standard evolution of a human. I know that sounds arrogant to say that, but I've seen it in people who have overcome trauma and done the work to heal. I've seen a different just level of understanding of themselves and their place in the world and the connectedness of the world and all of these things. What do you think? Do you see that in people, Dana?
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I do feel that I mean, I know it sounds really, like you said, really just kind of,
Woo woo.
well, yeah, and like kind of
Something.
pretentious and,
Yes,
um, you know, what have you. But
it's there.
everything is always evolving.
Yeah.
And I really do feel that we're kind of at this next stage of evolution, I guess you could say, that's more of an emotional evolution.
Yeah.
And people are getting more um, tapped in to individuality and respect and understanding boundaries and self-esteem and all of that. So this is the first time in history, really, where we've had this luxury.
Yeah.
For so long, it's been about, you got to work. You're just trying to exist.
That's right. That's right.
And now we're at this place where, food, clothing, shelter, kind of the basics are
Mostly
there.
gotten. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we're able to kind of take a deep breath and do more of that kind of self-actualization type thing. And a big part of it has to do with making those connections between, mind, body, spirit kind of a
Yeah.
thing, and our emotions, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And when somebody has gone through a trauma similar to this trauma that we've all experienced on some level, I really think when they do the work, I mean, look, here's an example. This is a one single example in my own life. One of the things that I have learned the hard way is to not judge people. I don't judge other parents unless I know for sure that they're abusing their child I, or neglecting them in major ways. And what I mean is, like, I have a different idea about parenting than, let's say, my best friend. She parents her children one way, I parent my children a different way. However, we both have good, healthy children who are loved and who are safe. And so we don't judge each other. That sounds simple, right? But what I'm saying is, you get, I have become humble and non judgmental in a way that I could not have imagined in the past. Not just relating to children, I just use this as an example, but in general, like, without even knowing it, I was kind of almost raised to be judgmental of other people and their beliefs and the things that they thought, said, did, whatever. And now I'm just so like, live and let live, baby. Just, and it's such a freeing place to be. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I will judge you if you're a pedophile. I will. I will. And I'll judge you if you hurt people on purpose. I will. But other than that, I'm not going to judge you. You know what I'm saying? And that's it. I mean, that's how I feel. And the thing is, that sounds so basic and simple, but for me, that was a huge evolution. It was me growing up and going, who the heck do I think I am? I'm not like Salt and Pepper say, even though I'm not this kind of religious, but they say chill and let my father do his job. I feel that way about it. Chill, let whoever do their job. Anyway, okay. Um, sorry, one sec. Okay, I got a little off track there. Um, let me see if we have any last questions. I know we are getting close to time, and I know we both have stuff to do. I'm going to just scroll down to the bottom because I'm hoping I'm not missing any. Make sure you're using a question mark if still not. Oh, Jesse Singh has a nice surprise. Hi, Jesse. I'm always happy to see your comments. And I'm happy to see you here today. Um, you guys, there's a lot of great comments in here, but I'm just looking for okay, we'll do this one and then we'll wrap up if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Okay. Heather says, how do you learn to trust again? And this is a tough one, Heather, but I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents and then I'm going to let Dana. I know Dana has some really good stuff to say about it, but my 2 cents on this, Heather, is to first learn to trust yourself again. Start there. Learn to trust your intuition. Learn to trust yourself. And then don't just blindly trust anyone after that. I don't care if they're related to you or not. You can't, until you know for sure that a person can be blindly trusted, you cannot blindly trust anyone. And I don't really know that I don't really know that anyone can 100. Okay, that's not true. I know people in my life I would blindly trust today. Um, but those people didn't just get there by accident. You know what I'm saying? There are a few people in my life that I know that if I, for example, would die and my children weren't fully raised yet, there's maybe one or two people in my life who I would feel comfortable with my children going and living with. That's what I think is blind trust. That's how serious I think it is. Because I personally, I don't think that you should blind trust. I think you should trust with prejudice. That sounds funny, but what I mean is, you know, look at past behaviors, look at, your boundaries, look at what you have seen this person do up to this point. And if somebody has always, it's like that Charlie Brown football situation with Lucy, you know, she keeps putting the football back. Come on, I'm really gonna hold it up this time. And every time he goes and he kicks the ball and he gets hit on it, knocks on his head because she pulls the ball out from under him, and he keeps trusting her over and over again. I mean, that's the definition of insanity. But if you think about it, expect, um, what is it? Doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. Bottom line, my point is, first you trust yourself, you learn to trust your intuition and your gut again, and then you trust carefully, slowly, and with prejudice to as to what, not prejudice in the racial way, but prejudice is to what has already happened in the past. Take that into account. If that person has betrayed you over and over again, don't trust them. If they betray you once, shame on them. If they betray you twice, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Dana?
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up a really good point. It starts with learning to trust yourself again and trusting your discernment.
Yeah.
So if somebody's I think this is a big lesson for a lot of us is realizing we often feel broken. How do
Mhm.
I learn to trust again? What's wrong with me? Why am I so cautious? Why am I so fearful?
Yeah.
Why can't I just kind of love like I've never been hurt? Right.
Right.
And we just want to go full speed into trusting people again. And the reality is, the way that we trusted people before
Mhm.
wasn't healthy.
Yes.
And that can be really difficult for us to see because there's probably a lot of people around us that trust the same way, you know? And
Yeah.
so they're very quick to open up to strangers or on a first or second date. They're very quick to, um, like, well, I'll trust you till you give me a reason otherwise.
Hmm.
And that kind of mentality it's poor boundaries and it's poor self-esteem,
And
frankly,
dangerous.
but
Yeah.
dangerous. And we don't realize it because so many of us are kind of raised, or somehow we get these messages that that's
Hmm.
how what's trust is about. And the reality is it's earned.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah, and it's earned with appropriate behavior over a consistent period of time.
Yep.
And so it's appropriate, to if you're starting to get out there and meet people again, um, you know, to take common sense or, precaution, meeting them at a restaurant or a coffee shop instead of having them meet you at your house, not giving them your full name, you know,
And healthy people will get it. They will go, I understand. Of course, you don't want to tell a stranger all this information about yourself.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like Angie was saying, it goes back to trusting yourself. And so you have to be able to be honest enough with yourself when somebody's acting in a way that's not okay with you.
Yeah.
And we don't need, and this is another big, I think, aha moment for a lot of survivors, is we don't need concrete proof.
Right.
So if we're getting out there again and we're dating especially,
Hmm.
and somebody's acting in a way that's just not comfortable with us, maybe they're calling you pet names, maybe they're texting too much, maybe they're not really texting that much at all. Maybe they seem to be kind of like flirty, but in a weird way where if you were to mention it, they could deny it.
Yeah.
Like just kind of behavior that seems off. If it seems off to you, that's all you need to know. You don't need to figure out if it is in fact off, what their intentions are, if it's you're making a big deal out of things, none of that. If it's uncomfortable for you, it's uncomfortable, period. And
Yes.
then setting your boundaries and holding your boundaries and not letting them push it. This goes back to that internal external locus of control where you're like, oh, I'm not comfortable with being called sugar or babe or whatever, and like, oh well, I'm sorry, it's just my culture, or I just call all women that, or men that, or whatever. And
Hmm.
they're justifying it and you're like, you know what, that might be, I'm still not comfortable with that,
Right.
so
Right.
don't call me, I don't know you. Like don't call me these pet names, or um just whatever, wherever your lines are.
Right.
Um,
A good thing to say in that situation, just a side note, is if somebody does something like that, and they call you something you don't want to be called, they touch you a way you don't like to be touched, like at work, and it's weird. You just say, "Well, I understand what you're saying, but since it bothers me so much, would you mind not doing that, or would it be a problem if you could you stop?" And say it politely in that way. A lot of times they don't really have any other option but to say, "Okay," unless especially in a workplace. I've seen that, and workplaces, and I've found that to be highly effective. That particular statement, if it's okay with you, since it bothers me so much, maybe it would be okay with you to stop, or could you just not do it? Is there a problem with not doing it? That kind of thing. Just a side note. Really quickly, Dana, if you don't mind, I want to
Yeah.
get one more question. Shastina says, I'm still battling fibromyalgia with my DDD and stenosis of spine, and I still feel my concentration leaving me. I know that you study this stuff, so I wonder why my lack of concentration is. And she said, because I've talked about this fibro stuff a lot and done a little research. And I know you have a nurse, I mean, it's psychiatric nursing background, but, and then she says, do you think that's from dissociation or fibro fog? What do you think? I value your opinion. Okay. So I just want to say this. Obviously I think it could be both things. Um, I would say that if you're still really struggling emotionally from the relationship, I know it was, what, about 2 years now since you ended things, I think, if I remember right, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Um, if you're still struggling a lot with the emotions from the relationship, I would say that, it's possibly dissociation, but I would say the fibrofog might be a more likely culprit at this point. But then again, I mean, I still have my moments of, I like to say, you know, sometimes I call them blonde moments, sometimes I call them senior moments. I don't know. I call them brain farts, whatever. But I have all that, and
Mhm.
even today I've had it a couple times. So I think part of it is just leftover CPTSD stuff. And I think part of it is certainly the fibro fog is not going to make it any easier. I think it could definitely exacerbate the issue. Dana, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it could be any number of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, fibro fog is a very real thing. It can be depression.
Hmm.
It can be stress. I
Yeah.
think we are very quick to underestimate the impact that stress can really have, which of course feeds into fibro
Hmm.
myalgia and those issues.
Hormones and yeah.
Yeah, but when we've gone through something traumatic, it really is like an emotional bomb going off in our life. And if you've ever seen one of those, I don't know, like a war movie,
Hmm.
uh, especially one that's maybe probably more recent, where a bomb goes off, and in the movie, the soldier's walking through and he can't hear anything. And people are talking at him and yelling at him and
Oh yeah.
shaking him, and he's kind of like looking around and he's seeing things, but he isn't hearing them. He's
Can't. Yeah.
uh, that level of disassociation and shock is common when trauma's going on.
Yes.
Um, and and of course, in those war movies, it might be just because there's a loud sound and he lost his hearing for a second, but a lot of times it's that way after anything traumatic. We just go into this freeze mode, and it takes a little while for our brain, different parts of our brain to come back online. And some people, I think especially people with fibromyalgia, tend to internalize stress more so than people without. My brother has fibromyalgia and he's struggled with it since he's been about 17 and he's 40 now. And is one of the things I've noticed with him through the years is if it's weird how everybody handles stress differently.
Mm.
Some people drink, some people eat, some people spend money, some people sleep, some people get really irritable, some people
Gamble, do
gamble. Yeah,
drugs.
I mean, all kinds of things, veg out. Uh, my brother gets sick, and I tend to sleep or I eat.
Yeah.
And his is he ends up getting really, really sick. And so I would be curious to even maybe that's something that we could do, Angie, is dive more into that fibromyalgia and the connection between life stressors and
I would.
exacerbation of symptoms.
We should do that. I've done some research into it, and from what I really see a big connection. If you look
Yeah.
around, Dana, and you look at our population, as in the survivor communities here on the internet together, and
Mhm.
then you look at the general population, you will see a much larger percentage of our population having fibromyalgia, chronic pain, a number of other, like, autoimmune stuff and physical, just direct. I think it's a direct result of the prolonged stress. I really do. And I've done the research and I see how it could be that way. And we'll talk about it more. We could do research together if you want. And with your nursing background, that would be awesome, because you can see where the brain damage could have come from the stress, the the changes in the brain that lead to the. And I don't. And we have to be careful because we don't want to discredit. This is something I've become acutely aware of. I
Mhm.
don't want to discredit fibromyalgia because some people will actually say it doesn't exist, and they'll say, see,
Yeah.
you just proved it's all in the head. It's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying at all. But the external uh, abuse leads to a certain type of damage in your brain that can lead you down the road to fibromyalgia and other similar other issues. And at least that's what I believe to be true. That's what the research I've done indicates that, and I would love to know. We should talk more about it. Do you agree? Have you noticed that population thing with the
Uh-huh.
more? Yeah, it's such a
Yeah, I mean, and that is unfortunate with fibromyalgia is, so often it just kinda gets, glossed over as like, "Oh, it's just,
right,
somatic
which
symptom,
we are not saying that.
fictitious." Yeah, my brother
Right.
dealt with that for years.
Yeah.
I think some people and I would be curious, I'll have to look up some articles. I would be curious to know people with fibromyalgia if they're kind of, if they experience more physical sensitivities across the board. If they're more physical to like fabric or allergies or I just there's so much that we don't know about the human body and
Mhm.
uh, so I know stress is people just process it in a multitude of ways.
Yeah.
So I guess to get back to the question, um, it would be worth doing a screening
Hmm.
for depression and seeing if that's potentially part of it. I know that a lot of um, treatment for fibromyalgia and for just kind of oh bodily pain, different disorders without without a specific origin, I should say.
Hmm.
The medication of choice does tend to be SSRIs, which is a class of antidepressants. So that might be something to look into or to at least talk to your doctor or nurse practitioner about.
Yeah.
Um, and I would maybe chart it. If how long has this been going on? The brain fog, is it constant? Trying to rate it on a scale, 0 being fully clear thinking, 10 being it's like massive brain fog and you can't, everything is an uphill struggle.
Right.
And then kind of trying to figure out what's going on and maybe also charting your stress. So doing something like that for a couple weeks
Yeah.
can help, and it can help your doctor too,
Absolutely.
kind of pinpoint what's going on.
Yeah, and everybody's saying in the chat, Dana, everybody's like, yeah, we want you guys to talk about to do a series on stress related illnesses due to narcissist abuse and stress equaling dis-ease, which I agree.
Mhm.
And Malta says he would also welcome a discussion on illness caused by narcissistic abuse. Like I said, I've done a few videos on it, but I would love to maybe continue the discussion, or we could work together on something even bigger than that. um, what do you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, I think it's very real.
Yeah.
We live at a wonderful point in time where we have the internet, we have so much health awareness, medical advances, but we truly are just at the beginning of it. And especially when it comes to uh, the mind body connection. I mean, there's just so much out there that is connected. We're just not sure how. And but yeah, I would love to continue this discussion because I think it's very, very relevant.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you guys, we are picking up what you were putting down, so stay
Yeah.
tuned. We will definitely continue that discussion in the near future. And for now, yeah, I see, Mike. I'm with you. I think a lot of us have experienced sleeping issues, anxiety, depression. Yeah, a lot of this stuff, PTSD. Yes, Bonnie agrees with you. Dana's charting the stress, different strategies for overcoming the fallout. All good stuff. Yeah, so we will come together and we will discuss this again in the near future. Next week, we will be over on Dana's channel, which is I don't understand. Okay. Uh, I, it keeps, okay. Sorry. I'm trying to do too many things, y'all. Next week, we'll be over on Dana's channel, Thrive After Abuse, right here on YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed to her and to me and hit the bell notification on both to be notified when we do go live. You can also text Angie Live, all one word, ANGIELIVE to 33222. I'll text you every time I go live and each time I go live with Dana. And what else? You can find me right here. You can find me at queenbeing.com and all around the internet. Dana, Thrive After Abuse, Thrive After Abuse, thriveafterabuse.com, all
Yeah.
around the internet,
Dana
right?
Morningstar. Yeah.
Dana
I got
Morningstar.
that.
Yeah, you can just, even if you just type Dana Morningstar, Thrive After Abuse comes up here on YouTube too. So just remember Dana Morningstar, either way.
Yeah. Either
All
way.
right. All right, everybody.
Okay.
So Dana, thank you. As always, this is a great discussion.
Yeah.
And I guess we have our work cut out for us for the next one, or one
Yes.
of the next ones. All right. And everybody, we will see you next week on Dana's channel on Tuesday.
Okay. We'll see you
All
then.
right.
Have a wonderful week.
Have a wonderful week, everybody. Bye, Dana. Thanks.
Okay.
All right.